What's up, everybody? Brendan Dell here. Today, we're going to watch Codie Sanchez's video, 2023 Recession-Proof Businesses, and talk about why the information is total horseshit. I don't know Codie personally. She seems like a lovely person from the little I can tell from her few videos that I watched. And while she's got lots of good information there, and I want to say that I take no real pleasure in ragging on people or tearing them down, it's my opinion as someone who has worked in businesses like this, owned businesses like this, invested in many different kinds of businesses, that a lot of what she's describing is largely misleading. It's telling a very small fraction of the reality of the big picture. And so I want to equip you to make the best decision about how to spend your time, your money, and your energy. We're going to do that today. Before we dive in, I want to share a very simple concept that was told to me by a venture capitalist that I interviewed on my podcast. It always colors my lens for how I think about opportunities, and I think it should and can do the same for you. This gentleman's name is Zach Zeitlin. He owned a small venture capital firm, and what he said to me was this. Every time he looks at an investment, he thinks to himself, why am I seeing this opportunity? So why is it that me and his little venture capital firm versus Sequoia versus Andreessen versus whoever is getting to see this deal? If it's such a great founder, unique idea, and so forth, why are those folks not gobbling it up? What is it that he is bringing to the table that makes it unique and that he can add to this person that they're just not going to the big folks out there? And this is something he would ask every time he was thinking about an investment to see if he was a good fit. And this basic idea is this. We operate, all of us, in a little thing called a market, right? And these commodity businesses that Codie talks about buying, there's nothing wrong with them. I own some businesses like this, I've invested in businesses like this, and they can be great businesses, but they are hard. They are commodities by definition. They experience price pressure, margin pressure, have lots of operational difficulties, and in most cases are basically a job that the owner owns, not, how a lot of people would describe businesses as a self-operating mechanism that you could walk away from. And it doesn't mean you can't put good systems in place. It doesn't mean they can't be profitable, but there's a reason, right, that she's creating YouTube videos rather than just owning all of these. My bet is if you ask Codie what her best businesses are, digital businesses or the sweaty startups, whatever people are calling it these days, basically small businesses that she owns, the answer would be the digital stuff. So with that, let's dive into this video.
You got your first property when you were making how much a year?
68,000.
Now how many properties do you have?
Almost 700.
The real money isn't made in crypto schemes and NFTs and Airbnb arbitrage. It's in these boring businesses that have reoccurring revenue. Today, 10 minutes.
So stop here just for a second. And this is one of the things that I see a lot of these companies or like a lot of these thought leaders in videos do is he starts by saying, when is it that you bought your first property or that you got your first property? You're making $68,000 a year. Now, how many do you own? 700. Now we'll watch and learn more, but oftentimes I see these people cite these top line metrics without explaining the dilution that goes into it. So first of all, does he own 700 properties or is he managing 700 properties? Is it 700 single family houses in Michigan or is it 700 office Class A office buildings in LA? And what's the breakdown of all that? I see people say, I own $100 million in businesses or whatever. But when you actually break that down, what they're talking about is if they, give the top of the possible market multiple on top of all these things that they own, of which, by the way, they own, 3% stakes in all of them, but they give you the $100 million number. The reality of what they get on the back end is very, very different. And so this is something that you can look out for when you're watching these videos is start to do the math in your head. What is the net on all this stuff? And how does the math actually back out to me, the business owner, when I'm evaluating, is this going to be worth my time to build something like this? What's the real story behind it?
10 minutes or less, you're going to get a mental model for a high ROI, return on investment, to low ask pay, and I say that on YouTube, way to make money. Peter is about one of the nerdiest guys I've ever met. I think he'd be okay with me saying that. He is not only a systems engineer, but also a former Eagle Scout, which I find hysterical, basically took all of his engineering ideas and ways to create a system once that will work continuously and applied it to property management. If you own a house and you want somebody else to rent it to pay you money, Peter makes that process seamless for you. And it's one of my favorite ways to make money in a recession.
We thought we'd take you guys to one of our rental properties so Peter could walk us through what it means to be a property manager and still get, how much vacation do you take a year?
6 weeks.
How do you do that?
When you started out in property management, you had 0 property.
6 weeks. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's easy also as you're watching these things to go, oh my goodness, that's the life I want. But what does that actually mean? Is he on his laptop the whole time? What does it actually look like? And how long did it take to build that up? Can't take this stuff at face value. I meet people all the time that own companies like this. It's just never as rosy as it seems. It doesn't mean it can't be profitable. It doesn't mean it's not a good opportunity. Take it all with a grain of salt.
Now you have a lot of properties, but you couldn't buy all of them when you were starting out as a W-2 employee, right? So like what happened?
It turns out you run out of cash pretty quick when you start buying rental properties. The idea was, hey, let's start a property management company. We can exit our day jobs. And while we are in the business of managing rental properties, we can continue buying them and building our portfolio.
Do you use the property management business as a deal flow source?
You get to see a lot of deals. Your property owners that you're managing homes and apartments for often come to you first with, hey, should I sell this? Should I buy this? And so you're getting eyes on a lot of this deal flow, some of it off market even. The other nice thing about being in the business is you see the real numbers. I think that's a big.
So this is a hugely valuable reason to start a property management company, in my opinion, is you get to see the deal flow and you're in the market. And it's maybe the most compelling reason to do it. We'll talk about it as we go through and they share some of the numbers here, which are providing a skewed version of what a property management company really looks at. But I do 100% agree that having a company like this, whatever the industry is that you're in, if you can manage the assets and see them, then you start to understand, especially in a local opaque market, what are the opportunities, what can you, where are their deals, and you get first look at them versus the MLS.
Big issue with folks getting started in real estate is they don't know how to predict the income and expenses for a rental property. And when you're managing hundreds of them, you know exactly how well they're going to perform, which means you can bid accurately and build a portfolio knowing that it's going to actually make the money.
We're in one of my Airbnbs today. What's cool about Airbnbs is you can make more money up front, theoretically, because your cost per night is so much higher. The problem is if the market starts to go down, short-term rentals, I have contracts for 2 days, right?
Long-term rental management is extremely predictable revenue. I mean, I can tell you almost to the penny what my revenue is going to be next month and the following month. And it's...
Now, here's the thing about the predictable revenue with these companies. It's true. It shows up every month. And in many cases, if you develop good relationships with owners, especially if you can get into the commercial space, it lasts and lasts and lasts. The thing about it is, it's very, very small and actually can be pretty high labor intensity when you start to get into it. When you look at most of the property management businesses out there, the primary revenue source or the profit source for these companies is not the management. The management covers the baseline expenses associated with the staff to manage it. Where the real profit comes from is lease renewals and selling and buying of properties, i.e. brokerage.
Snowballs really well. So as you start building your portfolio of homes and apartments under management, your recurring revenue gets higher and higher and higher. You can raise prices on existing owners. So unlike short-term rental where it's high.
Same point here is, yes, it does. It grows, but so does the labor intensity associated with it. What I've seen looking at these businesses under the hood is that usually the margins associated with managing the properties produces very marginal profitability. Usually the small companies end up being essentially jobs for their owners with some support staff. And in many cases, the property management side of the company makes almost no money. It breaks even, and then they make money doing either consulting or brokerage or a combination of the two, and that's where the real profit comes from.
Highly variable, and it's hard to know how much your income is going to be. A long-term rental management company, it's very predictable.
I asked you why you don't do short-term Airbnbs. You said because it's a hospitality business, right? Which is true. We have the coffee cups and the teas and somebody available 24/7, whereas long-term is a different beast. So if you had to compare the two, what is long-term?
Long-term rental management is much more towards passive income. Once you have a great system in place, you can pretty easily get team members up to speed on how to handle the day-to-day issues. Don't get me wrong, there's issues, but they're fewer and far between than short-term rentals.
And here's why I'm obsessed.
Passive income is a misnomer for what you'll experience doing this. What you will see is chunky issues. You'll go a while without any problems, and then stuff will go vacant, or you'll have big problems in the properties or with the business. And whether you're the owner or the manager, you're going to have to deal with it in fits and starts rather than every single day. That said, it's not passive. There's constantly problems with these assets.
That's with property management. I like to own these companies. First, contractual reoccurring revenue. Obviously, if you own a property, you have to pay rent every month.
That's every month?
2, sticky clients.
Ask anybody who owns any significant amount of property or has any large portfolio, especially when you get into commercial, if the checks come in on time, predictably every month. What you will find is that, in fact, you are chasing tenants as the manager every single month to pay their rent on time.
Give me rent.
You'll get your rent when you fix this door.
Now, you could set up things where the credit card pulls from their account and so forth, and that does work for a certain percentage of owners, but it's not as easy as it's made out to sound here.
That's a sticky one. Sticky.
The contracts last a year on average, sometimes more, and people typically don't move. Most of my properties have the same tenants in them for 3 to sometimes 15 years.
You'll see long-term tenancy like that in single-family homes, a 3 to 5 year thing. If you have apartments, 1 to 3 years is what you're going to see, sometimes less. It's not a realistic expectation. If you do have large commercial properties, you will often see long-term tenants, but when you do have vacancies, they can last a year or more, especially when you're talking about larger properties, things like industrial property, or you have very specific build-outs for restaurants. So that's just the reality. And then it's very labor intensive to get those spaces released when you have those kinds of properties. So yes, they can last a long time, but when they do go away, and it can be problematic if you have debt service on the properties.
Next is no inventory. For e-commerce and all of these big, fancy, sexy businesses, you have to hold a bunch of stuff until you sell it. Property management, not that. Then you don't have to chase cash. They pay.
So this is why I do love service-based businesses, because you don't have to hold a bunch of inventory and it doesn't require a bunch of cash to start it up. So that's 100% accurate, and I think it's an excellent point.
Up front. You pay your rent on the first day, not the 30th day. Also, no big expenses or what's called capital expenditures. You don't have.
One more point here. They don't just pay by direct deposit. Some will, some won't. And it depends on the size of the property, the nature of the property, and what you're getting into. If you speak to my wife, who worked in commercial management for many, many years, she chased tenants every single month to pay their rent.
Have to buy the actual house or a warehouse or inventory. You are just the middleman between the owner of the stuff, aka the guy who owns the real estate, and the renter. Next, these businesses are sellable AF, aka there are all these big companies like these that buy up property management companies because they want to aggregate them. That means that you have an exit for this business. You build it for a year, 2 years, 5 years, and then you sell it off to somebody else for 3 to sometimes 10x your revenue.
So this is just categorically misleading. If you talk to business brokers or anybody who sees these companies trade, 10x revenue is a ridiculous number that you will basically never see on a small business like this. 90% of these small businesses are basically built around the ownership. And so when the owners leave, the systems in place do not work without them. And so what you will often see is companies trading for their revenue, period. Maybe 1, 2, 1, 3, sometimes 2, 3, maybe 5. I have looked at many, many deals like this, 10x, unless there is something very special and unique about what you've built and there is some enduring competitive advantage. Maybe you have some sort of technology play in there. Maybe somehow you, have very long-term contracts. You don't see multiples like that. And while yes, you can sometimes spin these companies off, there's got to be some meaningful reason that they're going to buy it. Because if you're a small shop, these big companies, there's just no alpha in it for them. There's no meaningful gain in spending the money to buy your revenue unless there's some emerging market or opportunity that they see when they can just open up, hang a shingle, and go acquire customers. This isn't meant to be discouraging. You absolutely can buy, build, hold, and sell these companies. I just want to give you a realistic picture of what you can expect buying and selling commodity businesses like these.
And also turn these into deal-making machines. You buy the houses from the people who you manage them for. This is all about deal flow. So especially in a recession, I like these bad boys because if I manage 700 houses and I know that one of my owners of these properties is going to sell 20, I'm going to be the first to find out. So I might offer on those houses before they even go to market. And then lastly, it's a cash flow monster. You have the
So before we get to cash flow monster, the deal opportunity is to me the reason you buy or start a business like this, because you're going to be in the market, seeing deals, understanding the opportunity, and you can build your portfolio over time while you make a living. That is the single most compelling reason to me to start a business like this. That's why I look at these kinds of businesses and why I would if I were you.
those systems and processes in place, the cash flow comes in because you get paid before you even do the whole service. So you are always cash flow positive. This is rare in businesses.
Very rare.
I think you've told me before.
So the cash flow positive thing is true, but what it's not taking into account is the actual profitability of these small businesses. Usually by the time you staff them, have equipment and so forth, and pay yourself just a reasonable market salary for the job you're going to do, there's very, very little margin in these companies. And in order to get to the scale, whereas these folks always tout putting a manager in place, you need revenue sufficiently high enough to hire someone with the sophistication that you're going to need to run and grow the business. If a person has the sophistication and wherewithal to grow a business, it's either A, got to be an opportunity vehicle that makes sense for them to go in and be in your business versus starting their own, or B, you're going to get a subpar manager, because otherwise, why wouldn't they A, do it themselves, or B, find a better opportunity? All right, that's it for this chat. I'm not going to go through the whole video, but the key point to take away here is, why am I seeing this opportunity? When you look at these deals, you think to yourself, have I found some asset that is for some reason being undervalued by the market, right? This person needs to sell. They're in sort of some kind of, I don't know, financial hardship, which should give you pause. They're tired. Their kids don't want to take it over. And then understand, what does the real numbers of this business look like and why am I buying it? Because when people talk about these small businesses as ATMs, printing money, and so forth, it's just not the reality. So if you found value in this video, would you please like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up button for the algorithm, all that good stuff. Check out one of the videos wherever they are on this screen. And with that, we will see you in the next video.